shows, Ben Darnell on your afternoon try. Author of the new book, Strike 4. You can download it on Kindle. Get it on Amazon. Gary Frisch joins us now on the Harvey Building Products Hotline. Gary, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, guys. It's nice to be here.
When you were coming up with the concept for this book, who did you talk to about the strike from 1994-95?
I came up with the concept back in the 80s, actually, when there was one strike or a lockout after another, it seemed. Don't forget, we're currently in a whole generation of baseball fans who come of age at a time where there's no labor strife. So a lot of people don't know what that was like, not to know whether or not the players are going to be taking the field. Back in the 80s, there were strikes and lockouts, it seemed, every couple of years. And every time that happened, there was newspaper headlines. I got newspaper headlines from the New York Daily News saying owners maul bringing up minor league players to fill the rosters. And so I just started thinking about what would happen if that were to actually come to pass. And they're probably going to talk about it again in 2021, 2022, after the current CBA expires.
What do you think are some of the things that match? What are some things that you're seeing in today's game that really resemble back then when all these things came to a head around a CBA?
Yeah, arbitration eligibility is always an issue. It was back then, it is today. Free agency eligibility back then was an issue, and it is today. Minimum salaries always going to be an issue, and those are happen to be the three issues in my book. But that thing's all going to apply today. Today, there's also the issues of the luxury tax, salary cap, that sort of thing, which didn't exist back then.
As far as the looked like some collusion and colluding was going on again, going back to 1990 when we were locked out, we had won a $280 million lawsuit from the 80s against the owners on collusion, and that was what really ticked them off in 1994, 93, 94, when we were going through the last collective bargaining agreement. As far as when it expires in 2021, what have you heard from the Players Association as far as them? I know you talk about in this article I'm reading here, USA Today is talking about they're getting ready for a fight, but I can tell you from being a player rep back in the 90s, we were always ready for the owners to do the worst to us.
Well, I'm not a journalist, Rob, and I've spoken to nobody. But that said, there are currently 17 teams that are $75 million or under the luxury tax threshold this season, and that says that teams just aren't really looking to spend a lot of money. And partly as a result, free agency salaries have somewhat flatlined. If there's, the market for free agents has been sluggish. Going back to the concept of the book, if the owners are backed into a corner, they might just indeed decide to bring up the minor league players. And if that were to happen, it would kind of like throw things out of whack. I think initially during a strike, I think the minor league teams would get more attendance because, baseball is part of the fabric of America, and I think fans are going to want to get their fix even if they can't go to the major league ballparks to get it. But if they were to bring up the AAA rosters, then we're looking at a new paradigm in which, the fans might initially greet the players as scabs or along those lines, and they may kind of stay away. But right now, the performance on the teams, today is very mediocre. There was a column in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette the other day. 15 out of the 30 teams are at or below 500. They just seem to be happy with mediocrity. Paul Zeiss, the author, said that it's as if their fans are already paying to see AAA players. The White Sox have called up 18 of the Charlotte Knights players so far this season. There's the potential that initially fans would stay away, but in my book, I theorize that eventually fans are going to really adopt these minor league players as their own, because these are guys who are not playing for multi-million-dollar salaries. They're playing purely for the love of the game, and a potential shot, 1 out of 10 perhaps, to make the big league. But they're running down foul balls, risking life and limb, to get a foul ball by the stands, where a major league player is not doing that. And so the networks start, shoving profiles of the players down the throats of the viewing public, and so you get to know these players. And I think that would be the book theorizes at least that there'd be a big upswell of interest if the AAA players filled the rosters.
We're talking to Gary Frisch, author of the book Strike Force. What'd you think when they floated out the fact that there's no fans going to Marlins and Rays games, and now they want to have the Rays play in two stadiums in two countries?
Yeah, I was very intrigued by that. It seems like an interesting concept. I'm not quite sure how that would work, but I mean, Montreal is a great city, and was a great city back in the days of the Expos, so I think there'd be an appetite for it up there. As far as how that would work exactly, I think it'd be a very strange situation.
Gary, I think your book comes out at a very interesting time because of, like, Tampa Bay is an example of something that's extreme. They have the lowest payroll, and they are winning baseball games. You just mentioned how much cities, local markets love their minor league teams. You're talking to somebody who's sitting in Hartford where they love the yard goats, know the players. The place is sold out every night. They're going to have a sellout crowd tonight against the Bowie Bay Sox. You have two humongo contracts in the offseason that are a decade long. Did you finish this before Machado and Harper got signed, by the way?
I finished this book. I finished writing the first version of this book over a decade ago, and I updated and revised it just more recently for publication on Amazon. So I guess in many ways it's prescient. But yeah, to your point, these minor league teams, I call them the backwaters of baseball, like the New Britain Bees and the Oneonta Tigers and the Pawtucket Red Sox. They are immensely popular where they exist, and that's partly because A, it's an affordable night out for the family versus major league prices, right. And B, you are literally on top of the players, and they're on top of you. It's a very intimate experience. You can greet them before the games. A lot of fans get out on the field during between innings for events and such. There's a lot of real interaction, which sadly you don't get at most major league stadiums.
Well, I can't wait to read it myself because it brings back a lot of memories of what happened in 1994. As far as it works out, do they get things settled, or is there a long strike coming after 2021?
Oh, in real life, I think that there's going to be a lot of brinksmanship. I think the owners are going to eventually concede some things back to the players' union. I don't think that there's going to be a strike. Although, it's been long enough that a lot of players and even some owners don't, fully understand the pain and the sacrifice of a strike, so they could be, motivated to go in that direction. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think there's going to be a lot of brinksmanship on both sides. In my book, there's a lengthy strike, and ultimately, I don't want to give too much away, but the players' union are seeing the fans, adopting these minor leaguers, and they're thinking, well, this isn't working out quite the way we had hoped it would. And they go back to the owners, want to negotiate, and the owners are saying, well, things are pretty good right now. We're saving a mess load in player salaries. We're making money at the gate. If you want to come back, you've got to earn your way back. And that kind of sets up a climactic part of the book.
Gary, I love how things that were made in Star Wars back in the 70s are coming true here in 2019. And yours isn't that far into the future, my man. I mean, yours is only a couple of years from now. But what are some lessons that maybe, going through this exercise, seeing the things from the past repeat themselves, what are some lessons, some cautionary tales that you could give leagues? Because Major League Baseball is not the only one. We were talking, NFL is going to be in this situation again. Not surprised if the NBA or NHL get into this situation again. What are some lessons?
I remember the year they canceled the Stanley Cup in hockey,
right.
And I remember the year football, tried to bring in replacement players. They made a movie about it.
Why do we keep going down this path? Why does history keep?
Learn from this?
I think it comes down to greed. I think everybody thinks that there's more of a piece of the pie to be had. The players look at the $10 billion industry that baseball is today, and see that the owners are reaping more than their fair share, and that luxury tax threshold has gone up incrementally versus the overall revenue in baseball. It's gone up at like a third of the rate of the total revenue in baseball. So I think it just comes down to greed, and I think what it's going to take. I think the lesson to be learned is that it's going to take level heads. And one of the characters in my book is this old school, more gentlemanly player representing the owners, not more gentlemanly type of person representing the owners. I think he sees himself as a mouthpiece for the owners, but he has a conscience. I think it's going to take people with common sense, and I think it's going to take people to come together and just try to work things out. Frankly, I don't think it's rocket science.
Gary, are you a baseball fan? Explain your baseball fandom to us.
Well, I came of age during the 1980s, and as far as a baseball fan, and I've drifted away a little bit. I still follow the sport, but my iconic period was growing up in the New York City area. I was a big Mets fan during the '86 World Series, and
so that's why you've fallen off a little bit. I see.
You're a Mets fan.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't blame you.
I live in the Philly area. We had the 2008 World Series, but not much before or since. I was saddened to see, Bill Buckner passed away a few weeks ago. That was the iconic baseball moment for me. Game 6 of the 1986 World Series.
Gary, thank you so much for your time. Good luck with the book, and love talking to you, man.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a great day.
All right, you too. That is Gary Frisch. The book is called Strike 4, and it's kind of a look into the future of 2021 when the collective bargaining agreement with the players and owners expires. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back to the sports menu brought to you by Laz Fly.